Welcome everyone to the Shamrock Shake month. Let's see what we have for the month of March. Before we get into it, I want to give a quick insight as to what we do for this series. We take your budget and answers from a request form. In the video description, there is a link to a Google form. It slowly gets updated every so often. With this information, we try to build the best computer we can to fit your means. Unless there are budget constraints, we spec out systems on AMD and Intel, both using their DDR4 and DDR5 Gen platforms. Once the build lists are complete, we compare each build using online benchmarks and list out the pros and cons between the top builds from the benchmarks. Using those, then we can determine what build is the best for your use case. But we can't do any of that without your input. Speaking of the Google form, let's see how you fill it out. Whether it's your first time here or you just don't remember, here's how we fill out the Google form. Starting out with your budget, prices are in USD. Budgets do not include taxes, fees, or Windows keys unless stated otherwise. Next, we have your type of system, whether it's gaming, working, or combination of the two. Form factor preferences will determine the case size we go with, whether you want a mini ITX all the way to XL ATX or you have no preference. Next is CPU and GPU preferences, whether you want an Intel CPU, AMD CPU, NVIDIA GPU, or AMD GPU, as well as no preferences or other stated here. Areas of focus, whether you want to focus on the CPU, cooling, the motherboard, etc. Just FYI, the smaller the budget, the harder it is to do specific areas of focus. If you've already purchased or own system components, if you want to do a complete upgrade, instead of just carrying some system components over, just leave this blank, but there's no sense in buying two PC cases if you already have one. Any peripherals you want, such as a mouse, keyboard, and monitor, and then any other requests stated down here. Just a reminder, we do not collect any personal information, such as email addresses. Quick disclaimer, prices will vary if any sales are going on or stock changes at the time of recording. Because of this, we try to get the budget builds as close or slightly over the stated budget. Unless asked, we are not including taxes, shipping costs, OS keys, or peripherals in the final cost from the budget. Alright, with that all out of the way, let's see what our response is for this month. And we have no responses. Since that's the case, we're going to get into virtual reality gaming on a nice budget of, let's say, 500 USD. Now, there's a bunch of different avenues we can take to do it, so let's take a look at what we can do. Before we start taking a look at the hardware we can get, we're going to do two categories of hardware. The first is going to be standalone virtual reality gaming, things that don't need a computer or a console to connect to. The second is going to be console-oriented. It's a headset that needs a computer or some sort of console to actually play all the games off of. Alright, starting out with the MetaQuest 2. You can get this on Amazon renewed with a 256GB internal storage. The entire headset, all in one, for $269.99. If we move up to the MetaQuest 3, at 128GB, the headset only, not the starter bundle, we spend $499. Now if you want the starter bundle, it's going to go all the way up to 600 USD. It also comes with a carrying case, but that is only 128GB of storage. If we bump it up to 512GB and only the headset, it bumps it up to $649. Moving on to our console-oriented headsets, here we have the Oculus Rift S. So this is, instead of being a standalone headset, it does have to run off your computer. Comes with the headset and the controllers for $359. Now lastly, if you have a PlayStation, we have the PSVR for $432.59. Now this is the first version. If we go ahead and try to get the PSVR 2, we can get the entire thing for $549.99. Now there was one more thing I wanted to bring up, and the Nintendo Switch VR headset, made by a bunch of different companies. It's literally just a VR headset that mounts onto your Switch. You can get them for 20 to 40 bucks, depending on which one you go for. And for the $500 USD budget, you can also get a Switch OLED. So a brand new Switch OLED and a headset, and you're sitting right around $400 to $450 USD. Now this is actually considered a console headset and not a standalone headset, because you do have to purchase the Switch to buy it. It's kind of like using your phone as a virtual reality device. To finalize our list for the console/PC headsets, we have the Nintendo Switch, we have the PSVR, the Oculus Rift S. For the standalone headsets, we really only have the MetaQuest, either the 2 or the 3. And then there was one more headset I wanted to bring up. This is kind of standalone, although you do need to connect your phone or controller to it to actually use it. This is still more of a standalone virtual reality device. You can't really game on it, but we might as well just take a look at it. These are the Vive Flow. For $4.99, you can get a hybrid standalone / stream VR headset. Now this won't be the best at tracking, but it is intended to be more of a lightweight VR glasses headset. Similar to how there are others out there such as the Rocket Air or Virtue, these you need to pair your phone to use as a controller. Now supposedly you can stream VR games to these glasses, but I don't know about any controllers or anything to play games. So we've seen there are plenty of different virtual reality headsets you can get for a nice budget of 500 USD, but there's not that many options for standalone headsets at that price point. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all of our headsets, we're going to throw them in an Excel sheet, compare each headset to each other for the price, see what our pros and cons are for each, and then determine pretty much what you want to go for its price. So I found a website called VR Compare. We're going to be comparing our standalone headsets versus our console powered headsets. Now it turns out that they consider the HTC Vive Flow a standalone headset, so we're just going to compare it with that. So we're going to be comparing things like the initial release date, the current price, whether it's with or without controllers, its refresh rate, its resolution per eye, as well as things like the FOV, its tracking type, possibly its weight if it showed it here, any battery life that it's possible have, as well as some extra features like its USB ports or what kind of chipset it is, things like that. Now most of this will change between the two headset types. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and actually just start from the top, work on our standalone headsets, and see which one's the best to do. The Meta Quest 3 was released in 2023, the Meta Quest 2 in 2020, and the HTC Vive Flow in 2021. Currently, you can get the Meta Quest 3 for 500 USD with controllers, $299 for the Oculus Quest 2 with controllers, and of course that HTC Vive Flow without controllers for 500 USD. Next up, we have the refresh rate. So both the two Oculus and the Meta do have 120 Hz refresh rate, while the Vive does not, has 75. The resolution on the Meta Quest 3 is 2064 by 2208, while the other ones are less than 2000 overall per eye. Visible FOV, 110 horizontal versus 96 horizontal, while the Vive is just 100 diagonal. If we continue on, they all have integrated speakers. The Oculus and the Meta have headphone jack, both use USB-C and Wi-Fi streaming. Now I did say earlier that you can stream with the HTC Vive. There is a way to do it, it's just a workaround you need to do it. I know it says that you can't do it here, but there is a workaround for you to do it. They all have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi capabilities. These two have 128 gigabyte base models. The memory for the Meta Quest 3 is 8 gigs versus 6 gigs versus 4 gigs. 0.08 hours, 5 minutes for hot swapping batteries. Battery life is 2.2 hours compared to 3 hours. So the newer one does have less battery life. And here are things we can see like the different resolution per eye comparison, the FOV, the pixel per degree, and then we can continue on and compare it to different headsets. So overall, if you're looking for a standalone headset, I would look at the Meta Quest 3. I know it's only 2.2 hours compared to the 3 hours given by the Meta Quest 2, but overall, when you can get things like more memory, of course I know storage is still a little bit, but it gives you the ability to stream games that way from your PC. So for overall comparison between the three standalone headsets, I would go for the Meta Quest 3, possibly then the Oculus Quest 2, and then if you want to, the HTC Vive Flow. If the HTC Vive Flow was not $499 and it was something like $299, then I would say go for the Meta Quest 3, then the Vive Flow. But again, these are more of virtual reality glasses than an actual headset for gaming. And if we move on to our console-oriented headsets, now they don't have the Nintendo Switch VR headset on here, which kind of makes sense. For that standpoint, it's literally just comparing the Nintendo Switch and its capabilities to actual virtual reality headsets. So we're kind of just going to leave that at the end and see what we see after that. So we have the Oculus Rift S, the first gen PlayStation VR, and the second gen PlayStation VR. For the Oculus Rift S, you can buy it for $399 with controllers according to this, $299 with controllers and base stations, or $550 with controllers for the PSVR 2. Of course, if you go used, it's going to be less. PlayStation VR both have 120 Hz, while the refresh rate is stated to be around 80 Hz for the Oculus Rift S. According to this, the resolution is 1280 by 1440 per eye, versus 960 by 1080 per eye versus the 2000 by 2040 per eye. Next we have our degrees of FOV, 110 diagonal versus 96 and 111 versus 88 and 88. We have the weight, something we kind of didn't cover in the previous one, but weight's a big one. You know, you kind of don't want to be having this thing front heavy on your face all the time. 590 grams with the head strap versus 400, not even without the head strap. Kind of leaning more towards this. The PSVR seems to have eye tracking. Now the base stations you kind of don't need, which is why it says no base stations required. But things like body tracking, hand tracking, face tracking, these are all kind of like extras when it comes to these. Controller weight kind of depends. I would still go for the second generation Oculus Touch controllers. We get 20 hours of battery life versus a rechargeable 10 hour and just rechargeable. We have integrated speakers versus earphones. This one we get DisplayPort 1.2 on USB 3.0, while this one gets HDMI and this one gets straight Type-C. Now Bluetooth is an interesting thing. You don't necessarily need it because most of these have like a headphone jack, so you can just plug your headphones right in. And then here we have the pixel density, the FOV, like we saw before. So all in all comparison, if you want something with high refresh rate and let's say a good pixel density per eye, I would go for the PSVR 2. If you want something that's more controller oriented, I would go for the Oculus Rift S. Now I know it came out in 2019 while the PSVR came out in 2023. That is a 4-year difference. For the price of the PSVR 2, we could actually probably get a better Oculus overall. Now that we know what headsets to look out for, let's hop over to eBay and see what kind of pricing we have there. On eBay, we can get a first generation PSVR. We get it for around $150. We can get an Oculus Quest 2 for around $200 US. Same one, except this one's 256 GB for around $200 US. And then if we start going up to the Meta Quest Pro, that is right around that $500 USD budget. If we go for the Valve Index for the PC, it goes all the way up to 620. So this is a little bit over our budget. So we can get a second generation PlayStation VR, pretty much the entire bundle for $350. Meta Quest 3, 128 GB headset only is $339. So let's say you can get the VR headset used and then just pick up some controllers and you're still under that $500 USD budget. Oculus Rift S for $165. If we go pretty much pre-owned on eBay, we can actually get some really good headsets for that $500 USD budget. But all in all, let's check out our best choices. So for our best choices for standalone headsets, we went with the Meta Quest 3. And then for our best choices for console-oriented headsets, I would go for the Oculus Rift S or the PlayStation VR 2. Now these are kind of tied, as for the price of a PlayStation VR 2, you can get a better Oculus headset than the Rift S, since these do have a 4-year release difference. So I would actually look more into that if you wanted a PC-oriented VR headset. But all in all, yep, if you have a console, I would go for the PSVR 2 if you have a PlayStation. If not, then possibly looking into a better Oculus Rift. And then if we wanted to finish this out and talk about the Nintendo Switch. Now the Switch doesn't have too many VR games and you can't really stream to it. So it was a good thing to bring up. But at the end of the day, I would just kind of stick with these or get a Meta Quest. Now, if you were going to buy a Switch anyway, then there you go. That's about it for virtual reality gaming. For a price point of $500 USD, there are quite a few options, but there's not too many when it comes down to this. Don't forget to fill out that Google form. Thank you so much for watching. Hit that subscribe button if you feel like it. Like if you like, dislike if you dislike it, and I'll see you all in the next one.